Welcome back to Soul. I'm so happy to have you join me today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Tuesday or whenever you're tuning in to listen to me. And I know we always talk about the soul, we oftentimes speak about the mind. Today, we're going to touch a little bit on this and that, but then also the body. And I'm especially happy today because I've got a special guest joining us today, Ashley Robutz. Thank you, Ashley, so much for being on Soul. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I am doing pretty well, honestly. It's a beautiful day here. We haven't had a really warm day, even though it's summer. So I really cannot complain. How about you?
Love that. Same, based out of London, where it's usually very gloomy and gray, but happy to have similar to weather to Northern California, I would say today. So always grateful for that. Yeah, but Ashley,
Oh,
I'm so happy that you are here today. And I'm really excited to be able to share your story and hear what you've got to share with our listeners at Soul. So I'd love to hear. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What brings you to Soul today?
yeah. So, I personally went through a big health and fitness journey. So right now, I consider myself a health mindset weight loss coach. I know that's very wordy, but it's hard to put into words how I actually help women. And to go back to the beginning, when I went away to college, I gained 30 pounds and I was so mean and horrible to myself. It was one of those things where it wasn't like, oh, I just, gained weight and that was it. I went down this deep, dark spiral of honestly hating myself. And sometimes I know I say these harsh words, but I always like to that be real with people about my story because I think there's so many women that struggle so much with their body. And again, I went down a deep, dark hole. And I honestly, it's so funny. The catalyst to me getting healthy and really focusing on my mindset. And I ended up losing the 30 pounds that I had gained. And it was this book. And I don't even like to say the name of the book because it was essentially a weight loss book. But this book touched on mindset. And it said, if you want to have your dream body, essentially, you have to believe that you can. And I was like, what? And it just was so interesting to me because I had never heard of anyone talking about mindset before. And in this book, she touched on your thoughts. And I realized how horrible I was to myself. I would beat myself up in my brain. I would set alarms on my phone telling me to go to the gym, just horrible stuff. And so once I read that book, I started really getting into mindset and then nutrition. And I'm a very obsessive person. So when I really love something, I become obsessed and I need to know everything about it. And so I went on a deep dive into mindset, nutrition, and movement. And I lost 30 pounds really, really quickly. And it wasn't in an unhealthy way. I just was so interested in learning how it worked. And so I lost the weight and it was perfect timing because I really wanted to audition for pro dance teams right after college. And I didn't know how that was going to happen again because I was so uncomfortable in my body and in my skin. Um, but I ended up losing the weight and auditioning for pro dance teams. And I kind of swung to the other side of the pendulum where I was almost too obsessed with food and it got to a point where I had lost the weight, but I still at some points were really struggling with my mindset. Like I still struggled with binge eating. And I think that is when I really realized, wow, you can't just, when you lose weight, you're not going to magically have confidence. You're not going to magically have food freedom. You're not going to magically fall in love with your body. It's not just about the weight loss. I will say, I do think, feeling energized and, um, you know, feeling good in your body is very, very important. But if you don't have the mindset piece, you can still have your dream body, but still not love yourself or love your body or have the food freedom that you want, because everybody wants to have their dream body, not for the physical part of it, because they want to feel differently. They want to feel confident. They want to feel energized. They want to feel like they can be themselves when they walk into a room. And so that's why the women that I help now, it's so important that yes, we focus on the nutrition, we focus on the movement, but we focus on the mindset too, because if you can't love yourself where you are right now, it's not going to magically be fixed once you reach some goal weight. So, anyways, the long story short is I went through my own health and fitness journey, and that led me to really doing the work that I do today.
That's an incredible journey. I especially love, well, first of all, the story beginning with, I guess in your case, it's the freshman 30, not 40, but
Yeah.
it's so inspirational to have gone through the journey and especially when you realize that, the thoughts in your head, it's you. It's, oh God, to quote Taylor Swift, I'm the problem, it's me, but it's really our mind's magic. And I absolutely love what you said that it's not that you want to look good, it's that you want to feel good when you've got your dream
Mhm.
body. That's incredible. And nowadays there's so much pressure, especially on women to fix their bodies. People are always like, "You're too thin," especially now before summer, of course. How do you
Yeah.
guide the people that you're working with or even yourself to, try to avoid falling into old patterns and avoid these societal pressures?
Yeah, I think that comes from really being true to who you are and learning who you are at a deep level. Because when I was chasing these, model bodies, I I feel like it was really just distracting myself from actually getting to know myself. It was something that I could focus on that wasn't myself. But when you actually start leaning into yourself and your own body and your likes and dislikes and who you are authentically, that's when you start to actually have real unconditional love for yourself. And when you have that unconditional love for yourself, you're able to block out other things around you, the societal pressures. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm perfect. I actually recently, it was like maybe 3 months ago, there was this girl on Instagram and her body is amazing. And she went to the gym every single day in the morning. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the gym every single day in the morning, even though I typically don't. I'm more of like a lightweight Pilates, or I'll do my pole, or I'll, go for walks and stuff. So I do a little bit more lighter intensity. And I started going to the gym just like this influencer did. And I started not to feel good. I got more bloated. I felt less energized. And it was just such a good lesson for me is that, your body truly knows what it needs. You don't need to follow some influencer plan or a booty building PDF. Your body knows what's right for you. You just have to give yourself the space to listen. But again, that comes from learning yourself and having that unconditional love for yourself at the same time. Because I always say two truths can exist at the same time. You can love your body while striving for more, but you don't have to, hate yourself into having the body that you want because that's what I did for a really long time.
I'm getting so many good quotes out of this session. Your body knows what's right for you. You can love your body while striving for more. I absolutely, absolutely love that. So it sounds like the goal is really to strive for something that's more sustainable. And as you said, right, just making sure that we work through that mindset. I know that you and I had talked about this before we got on the episode, but one thing that you talk a lot about is also managing your nervous system for weight loss. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So even just to take it back, so your nervous system controls everything. And we live in a world right now where things that trigger our nervous system to be in fight or flight in a dysregulated state shouldn't be. For example, our nervous system and brain has not adapted as quickly as our environment has. So, therefore, our body thinks a bear is chasing us when we get maybe an email from our boss that is a little bit intimidating that's like, we need to talk. Even though consciously in our brain, we're like, okay, that's scary, but not bear chasing me in the woods scary. But our body hasn't adapted. And so when we are constantly getting these signals to our body that we need to be stressed out, chronic stress and being in that fight or flight, your body doesn't focus on anything except surviving. It's not, if your body's in fight or flight, your body's not, okay, let's lower our cortisol. Let's be balanced, let's, um, let's digest optimally, it's not going to lose weight unless you're severely under eating. Because again, if your body is fighting for its life, it's going to hold on to fat so you can survive, right? Because you're getting chased by a bear, you're not going to be able to stop and get food. You're going to be running for your life. And I know this probably sounds like, Ashley, obviously we're not running from a bear, but our body really does not know the difference. And so it's so important for so many women. This is what I saw when I first started health and fitness coaching. There were some women that followed the plan. They, lost the weight and it was great. And then there were others that were so frustrated with themselves because they felt like they were doing everything right. They were moving their bodies, they were talking kindly to themselves, they were eating really healthy, but they would not lose any weight. And I found out that it was the nervous system. The nervous system was this missing piece that so many people are not aware of. And also, just so you know, your nervous system, you might think that you're being productive when you're really in fight or flight. Because for one, I thought I was just this productive queen. I was like, I'm going from one task to the next, like, woohoo, like, I'm so productive, woohoo. And then I came to realize that I couldn't even fill up my water bottle without feeling like I need to have a podcast on or it's taking too long. That rushing feeling is a sign that your body is actually dysregulated and you're in fight or flight. And so again, a lot of women don't even know that they're dysregulated or have this chronic stress because we get so used to it, right? We get used to those maybe stressful emails from our boss. We get used to scrolling on TikTok and having all this constant stimulation 24/7. And so when your body actually slows down, you don't even realize that that's what you actually need because we're in this constant stimulation and we have so much just stress in our lives that our body's not used to processing. And so I truly believe that when you regulate your nervous system, not only will you see the progress that you want, but you're going to feel so much better. Even for me, I use this example, golf. My dad and brother are obsessed and I recently got into it, but for the longest time, I thought it was so boring. I was like, this is taking too long. I have to wait for another person to hit. I just want to go hit my ball. Like it was this constant rushing. And now I actually sit in the car or I'm walking. I'm like, wow, it's so pretty out here. You can actually stop and smell the roses. So funny. Whenever people are like, oh, stop and smell the roses, I'm like, ain't nobody got time for that. I'm just trying to get my walk in so I can go back home and be productive again. And so this whole nervous system regulation is such a powerful piece that a lot of people don't even know about. And it's a really important piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely, you're spot on. I love the golf example you gave as well, that even something that is supposed to in itself be an activity, and yet your mind still feels like you should be doing more while you're already doing something.
Exactly.
This absolutely resonates with me. A couple of weeks ago, I decided to take a staycation and took a few days off of work. But at some point, I don't know if this happened to you, but I was trying to do laundry while I'm cleaning the house, while I'm working on the podcast. And I found myself standing in the middle of my apartment, kind of shifting left and right, thinking, do I first press play on the recording or do I first? And then I went, oh, maybe I should just stop and take a pause,
Yes.
rest, take it easy, and focus on
Yeah.
the now before trying to be productive when I should be on holiday. So,
Yes. And I think so many women struggle with that, because we just live in this society now where productivity is really praised. And it's really hard to understand because you think you're doing a good thing. And even for me, when I first started on my health and fitness journey, I was like, ooh, I'm going to the gym twice a day. I'm going to eat as little as possible. And I'm like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then you plateau or you don't see the results that you want. And then you question yourself. And that's why, again, I focus so much on mindset because all of these women who are doing the things that they need to do are so hard on themselves when they don't see the results that they want. And it's like, girl, you are crushing it. You're actually doing too much. I know you think that you need to be doing more, but you're actually doing too much and you really just need to slow down, which is a hard pill for people to swallow because our society is so go, go, go.
yeah, it sounds like we definitely need to be more sustainable in our lifestyle. And you talk a lot about sustainable weight loss and how your approach is meant to focus on it being sustainable and long lasting instead of a quick and easy weight loss. I need to lose 10 pounds next summer and that's it. How does it work in your approach when you're coaching or when you're working with clients and people? How do you differentiate your approach to make it more sustainable?
Yeah. So, one thing I heavily focus on with my clients is identity work. And we all have this perception of ourselves in our mind, right? We have things that I believe I am healthy. I believe I do prioritize myself. We have all of these beliefs in our mind about who we think we are. And we even have beliefs about how we think other people think of us. All of these perceptions come into play with our identity and self image. So rather than trying to just change your behavior and, okay, I'm just going to eat healthy, I'm just going to work out, I help women change at an identity level. So I help them change who they believe that they are at their core, right? Because for me, I used to believe weight loss was really hard. I used to believe that working out, prioritizing myself was really hard. I used to believe that eating healthy was boring, right? And so once I shifted at an identity level and I made all of these healthy habits part of who I am, I actually enjoy them and I actually want to show up for them. The other thing, too, about my approach is I think the weight loss fitness world is very structured, right? And I'm not saying structure is a bad thing, but so many programs focus on, okay, you have to macro track. You have to track every piece of food that you put in your mouth. You have to work out and do the same type of workouts every single day and track what weights you're doing and progressive overload. While yes, that is an optimal way to get there. But in order for it actually to be optimal, you actually have to show up and do those things. And a lot of times that's too structured for people. We have so much structure in our lives with our jobs, maybe kids or whatever. We have so much responsibilities. And so when it comes to taking care of ourselves, so many of us want to kind of stray away from that structure. We're like, nope, we've already had too much of this in our day. I don't want to have to go to the gym or have to track food. It just feels very overwhelming. And so, how I help my clients is I help them listen to their own body. So, I have an intuitive eating method where I help them reach their goals, but it's a very different approach where you're learning to tap into your own body. You're not tracking macros. That is just another stressor that dysregulates you and again is working against you. Same with movement. I take a very different approach where I want you to find movement that you actually love because, yeah, you could strength train, but it's only going to work if you actually stick with it. And the way to find movement that you want to stick with is about finding ways of movement that you actually love. It could be pickleball, it could be tennis. I go boating a lot with my family and I wake surf and wakeboard. I don't force. And on those days, I'm not like, oh, I didn't work out today. It's like, what? No, I was moving my body while I was wakeboarding and wake surfing. That counts as movement to me. So again, even tying it back to the mindset piece, it's like expanding your mind on what movement is to you know? And so, but yeah, I think in terms of sustainability, it's about finding ways of movement you enjoy, learning to listen to your body, which I'm not going to sit here and say it's the easiest thing in the world because you do have to be in a regulated state to be able to be present with yourself and your body and shifting at an identity level. So you actually believe that what you're doing is part of who you are and you're not forcing yourself to do it. Does that kind of make sense, the difference between the two?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you actually reminded me, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, and she and I work a 9 to 5, although in some cases the 9 to 5 is actually like a 9 to 9 or a nine to
Right.
seven. You never know how it's going to be. So it's so interesting that you said that when you were talking about how I didn't go to the gym today, so oh that's really bad, but also I need to make time to do this, and maybe you feel a little bit guilty. And one of the things we were talking about was how she wanted to take on another activity. So she wanted to study on the side, but she was saying, but I also really want to get fit. And we were trying to think about when did we get to a state where we now have an opportunity cost? It's a trade off between working a 9 to 5 and taking care of our bodies, and working a 9 to 5 and maybe having a social life, or working, maybe not working 9 to 5 and having your studies. And there's this common myth that you, and it's not that you can have everything, right? You can if you put the work, but there is this myth that you constantly need to lose something to find something else. So maybe you're having less sleep if you want to be the person that wakes up at 5 a.m., goes to the gym, and then goes to work, and then has a social life and all of that. I find that a lot of times, again, especially with social media, especially with the younger generations, and because we're so overwhelmed these days with society, that there's so many myths and lies that are spread around. I wonder what are some others that maybe with your clients you've identified and kind of demystified those, and looked at the reality of things that hopefully was a lot more hopeful.
Yeah, and I think even just tying it back to that identity piece is I don't even think about walking in the morning. I don't even think about the food that I'm eating. Yeah, when you're first starting off on your journey, it might take a little bit more conscious effort, but the way I live my life, I'm not like spending hours and hours and hours working on my body. It just is ingrained in who I am. And I think that, again, when we think about having a trade off, you know, with your body, again, it might take some adjustments and shifting, but I also feel like you said, where we just have so much information, we have so many things going on. When you actually peel back the layers and maybe look at your time on social media, or you look at what you're actually doing in a day, you do have time to take care of your body. And the thing is, too, is when you feel good in your body, everything in your life changes. When you have the energy to do anything, whether that is working out or that is showing up to work and giving a presentation confidently, you know, I am obviously passionate about this and I'm maybe a little bit biased because this is what I do. But when I got healthy and I started working on my mindset, that combination allowed me to become a 49er cheerleader. It allowed me to have the courage to quit my corporate job and go all in on my business. And I'm not saying you need to do that, but I also think we have these we get this message in us that we can't have it all, you know? And I truly believe that you can. I think you can have it all. I think you can have the social life. I could think you can have the body. You can have the, career. You can have anything that you want. It just comes from one, believing in yourself, two, feeling good so you actually can show up to do all of those things. Because look, again, even coming back to the root cause, it's like if you're tired all the time, yeah, you're not going to have time to, you're not going to feel energized enough to work, to go to the gym, to also study for, something else at the same time. You need that energy. And if you don't feel good in your body, you're not going to be able to, which is why I'm biased, but I think it's the foundation for everything. But again, just kind of going back to your question, I truly think you can have it all. And I think it just comes from, again, being intentional with your time and feeling good in your body at the same time.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And to be fair, that is definitely the biggest myth that you'd hear, especially when people constantly look at, those quick diets of get fit in 10 days, do this for 7 days, and then you're going to be all set. And then they think, well, okay, if I just sacrifice my life for 7 days, focus on this. And they end up being so unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually reminds me of the 75 hard challenge because I kind of hate it, honestly. I just think doing that intensity and, no hate to anyone if you've tried it. I think it can be there's some pros and cons to everything, right? But I think it's too intense. And after that 75 days, is that what you want to do for the rest of your life? I know I don't want to do 2 workouts a day for the rest of my life. And so instead of doing this intense, all in type of energy, try slowly adding maybe a morning walk. And then after you got that on lock and you're like, oh, this is part of who I am, let's try, okay, we're going to add a nourishing breakfast. Okay, we don't need to change everything at once. We don't need to have 3 perfectly healthy meals, but let's just start with breakfast. Okay. And once that becomes a part of who you are, you've got that on lock. Cool. Let's add 2 workouts. Okay. A lot of women struggle because they try to go that they have this all or nothing mindset, which is what I work on a lot with. And when we go all on, we burn ourselves out and then we go to the other side and we're like all off because we get so burnt out. And so rather than just toggling back and forth between the two, it's so important to be able to slowly start to add in these healthy habits so they become a part of your identity, so they feel easy. I'm not saying they are easy, but they feel easy because they become a part of who you are. So I'm a firm believer in, slowly adding micro habits in over time rather than just like trying to change your whole life in 1 week.
No, absolutely. On that all or nothing mindset, I'd love if you can talk a little bit more about how that's worked with your clients. I find that to be especially key because that 75 hard is so all over social media trending. I've never tried it. I actually don't know too much what it is. I just know that 75 days of doing intense exercises twice a day and a lot of intensity bits, which I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of. But I'd love
Yeah.
to hear more about that.
Yeah. So with the all or nothing mindset, the thing about it is we get so in our brains about being perfect, We need to show up perfectly. We need to meditate every day. We need to do our 10-step morning routine. If we miss one step of that 10-step morning routine, oh, okay, we're done. We screwed up. This is a bad day. Might as well go binge on ice cream, go binge on all these different foods. Might as well skip my workout. Okay. So that's what that headspace looks like, right? But when you can get used to showing up imperfectly, consistently, that's when you're able to break that. I even tell my clients sometimes, this is kind of reverse psychology, but when they're like, oh, I'm just trying hard not to eat dessert. I feel like I crave dessert all the time. I'm like, I want you to tell yourself that you can have dessert every single day if you want. And they're like, what? I can have dessert every single day? I'm like, yeah, I want you to switch to a dessert that makes you feel good. So maybe not Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Have that maybe once, but maybe have like some yogurt and granola and strawberries, like something that, or maybe some chocolate, but allow yourself to have that dessert every single day if you want. Because the thing is we always want what we can't have. And so when you're like, oh, I can have dessert whenever I want, that need goes away because you're like, oh, this is actually boring. I can have this whenever I want. I guess I don't need to just eat it. I don't need to just crave this and want this. And so again, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. It kind of depends on food and, food freedom, I think, is a little bit deeper because we've got the emotional eating side of things. But in terms of all or nothing, I think the biggest thing is showing up imperfectly, but consistently. So you can't go to the gym for an hour. Cool. Do a 5-minute just arm workout on YouTube, in your home while you're making dinner, And again, it's less about the actual workout itself. It's more about building the consistency. And when you can show up for yourself and do the things you say you're going to do, that's where self-trust is built. And when you trust yourself to do the things you say you're going to do, that's where confidence actually comes from. Confidence is not from looking a certain way. Confidence is built from trusting yourself and doing the things you say you're going to do. I like to use this example where it's like, you say you're going to go meet up with a friend for breakfast, right? She shows up and you don't show up and you're like, oh, sorry, let's meet up tomorrow. Let's meet up tomorrow. She's like, okay, like here, I'm at breakfast. And you're like, oh, shoot, sorry, I'm not going to make it today, right? You're going to immediately lose trust in that friend, right? It's the same thing with you. You are the most important relationship you will ever have. You need to build that trust with yourself. And the more you do, the easier showing up becomes because without going on another tangent, a lot of women don't start their health and fitness journey because they have this fear of failure. They're afraid that they're going to say they're going to do something or say they're going to lose weight in this time. It's going to be different. And then they don't. And so you're constantly losing that trust with yourself. But if you can build a sustainable way and slowly add in those habits, and again, if you can't do a perfect 1-hour workout, which I don't even do 1-hour workouts, that's too much for me. Finding workouts that can fulfill that. Just so again, it's not about the workout, it's about you showing up for yourself and building that self-trust.
I absolutely love that, especially you mentioned how it's the most important relationship. It's the relationship with yourself, and especially the point on fear. And it's so true. A lot of it stems from a place of fear as opposed to a place of loving yourself and wanting the best. So you're almost afraid that you're going to fail at something. So you end up not doing it. And again, you just try to do the intensity because at least the failure is going to be much smaller than if you actually go all in. And that's so perfectly said how you talked about the levels that you've got. So unlocking the first level, try a walk, try breakfast. I absolutely love that. I think that's something that even I should probably start incorporating. It's almost like your life is a game, not really a game, but when you're playing PlayStation or
Hmm.
whatever, you go on to the next level. So you're really
Yeah.
unlocking a higher level of your higher self. What is one thing that you would say to any woman or also man, because we do have some male listeners, but
Yeah.
anyone listening out there, if they're currently stuck and they're not sure where to start, and they absolutely do want to see some results or start doing something but feel disconnected from their body, how would you walk them through it? What would you do?
Yeah. So I think a good place to start is noticing your thoughts. Even just to get, I was going to say regulate your nervous system, but I think even before that, we got to start from the beginning is notice your thoughts, right? How are you talking about food? How are you talking about your body? How are you talking about workouts? Once you have kind of a starting point of this awareness, that's when you can slowly begin to change them, right? And so I'll kind of say mindset and then I'll say an actual action. So just so people have Because I think sometimes mindset-wise, people can feel that it's not tangible enough, but I will say if you have these thoughts about your body or weight loss or being hard on yourself or movement, whatever it may be, I just want you to pause and then reframe it and start to say the opposite. And it's going to feel really weird at first, right? I was just interviewed on another podcast and she talked about bridge affirmations. And so rather than if you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, like I hate the way I look today. You don't have to go in the mirror and be like, I love how I look today, right? The complete opposite. But you can say, I'm working on feeling good in my body. That bridge affirmation. So you're not, because if you are like, I'm completely lying to myself when I say I love my body, start off with that bridge affirmation of, I'm working on feeling good in my body, or I'm working on feeling confident in my body. But again, the more you can notice and start to rewire and kind of reframe those negative type of thoughts in your brain, the more your brain is going to start finding the positives. It's part of our brain called the reticular activating system, and it's essentially what you focus on grows. You tell your brain what to focus on. And so if you're constantly looking at the negative or looking at fear or whatever it may be, that's what your brain's going to start to notice. But if you can constantly reframe, you're going to be able to start to notice the more positive things. Okay, maybe you don't feel good in your body, but you're like, whoa, actually, I'm feeling really energized today. If you don't focus on the positives, your brain is going to be like, nope, we don't look good. So I'm not even going to notice that at all. That's part of the reticular activating system. And then kind of with an actual action step, I know that is action, but it's in your brain and it takes some conscious effort and some practice. But again, I would just start small. Start going on walks, okay? Don't try to change everything. Just start going on a 15-minute walk every single day to build that habit of consistency. And then maybe you want to up it to 20, right? Maybe you want to up it to 30 eventually. But start a minimum standard for yourself. I actually call it kind of like a trigger habit where do one thing that you can do every single day. It could be lemon water. It could be a 15-minute walk. But that habit is essentially triggering to your brain, okay, look, we showed up. We're being consistent. And you're going to build that evidence of self-trust the more you do that. So start with the mindset and start with the trigger habit. 2 small things that you can do to really just start taking action and feeling good in your body.
Thank you for sharing those. I think even I'm going to start doing that. I like the lemon water one because it's also easy. Like you have no excuse not to do lemon water. Even if you don't have lemons at home, you can always go to the supermarket and buy some. Where can listeners learn more about you, connect more about you, work with you, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty consistent on there. I'm always checking my messages. So it's just at Ashley Robutz, AShleyRobutz. And then I also have a podcast. It's called The It Girl Mindset. I'm on Spotify. Most of them are on YouTube as well and Apple Podcasts. And then right now, I currently have some spots open in the Body Confidence Collective, which is my program where I help women lose weight and just really step into their healthiest self without the extremes, without macro tracking. We're really tuning in and listening to your own body and learning what your own body needs while you're on your way to body confidence. So that is where you can find me.
And I'm sure we're going to come looking. I know I will for sure, especially starting with the podcast, which I'm
Yeah.
very excited to tune into. Ashley, thank you so much. I do want to just cover again what we talked about today. Like I said, it's been a lot of amazing quotes, which I'm so excited to actually share with our listeners as well. Just notice your thoughts, starting with the mindset, starting small with the trigger habits, things that you can do every day, simple as going for a quick walk, understanding your nervous system and really realizing that there's no such thing as what I'm supposed to be doing, but rather what you can do and really showing up in the moment, no matter how small, peeling back the layers and understanding that when you feel good, you do good. That one I think will really resonate with the listeners. And I love that. For me, the most important one as well is you are the most important relationship you have, and you can have everything you want. It's just a question of making sure you put in the work, but also the right mindset to get to it.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Ashley. Anything else you'd like to share with us or end with us?
No, I feel like we covered everything. This was such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and for absolutely everything. For the listeners, as always, everything that we hear, we have to practice, and we do that step by step, day by day. With that, I want to wish you a lovely, lovely rest of your day, week, and whatever else is ahead. And remind you, we're going on a little summer break. So I will see you next month on soul.